The great hall of the alien court was silent. Hundreds of tall figures with shining eyes stood in a circle, watching. The air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. At the center of the hall, a young alien girl stood, in chains. Her hands were bound by glowing cuffs, and a long silver collar locked around her neck. She looked no older than a human teenager, but her skin shimmered faint blue, like moonlight on water. Her silver hair fell over her shoulders, covering half her face. Still, her eyes glowed bright, fierce, and full of fire. The judges sat above her on high crystal thrones. They were old, powerful beings, their voices deep like thunder. Lyra of the fifth star. The chief judge spoke, his voice echoing across the hall. You have broken the sacred law. You disobeyed your leaders. You caused disorder. Do you accept your guilt? The girl Lyra lifted her chin. She was not afraid. Her voice was sharp, though soft. I did what was right. I saved a child from your cruelty. If that is guilt, then yes, I am guilty. Gasps filled the hall. The crowd murmured in shock. None had dared speak against the judges before. The chief judge's eyes turned cold. Then you will pay the price. According to our law, you cannot be destroyed, but you must be punished. You will be sent far away from our world. You will serve. As slave to a human, you will obey him. That will be your fate. Lyra's heart pounded. A slave to a human. The very thought was worse than death. Her kind saw humans as weak, dirty, and foolish. To live under one was unbearable. Still, she said nothing. Her pride would not allow her to beg. Two guards pulled her forward. They dragged her through a shining portal, a doorway of light that hummed and crackled. The crowd watched as she disappeared, swallowed by the glow. On the other side of the portal, Earth was quiet. Night covered the land, stars shining above. A man named John sat in a small wooden house on the edge of a lonely town. He lived a simple life, working with machines and keeping to himself. He had no family, no wife, no children. His days passed in silence, but this night would not be silent. The portal opened just outside his house. A beam of silver light cut through the darkness, and John stumbled out of bed, shocked. He grabbed a lamp and ran outside, his boots crunching on the gravel dot. There on the ground lay a girl in chains. Her skin glowed faintly in the dark. Her silver hair spread like a river of light. John froze. What is this?" he whispered. The portal closed behind her, leaving only silence. On her collar, strange letters burned, shifting until they formed words he could read. "This slave belongs to John Miller of Earth. She will serve until her punishment is complete." John's heart raced. He shook his head. No, this must be a mistake, but it was not. The collar glowed brighter, locking itself with a final click. The girl opened her eyes. She looked at him with anger, pure and sharp. Her voice cut through the night. "Are you the human, my new master?" John stepped back, confused and afraid. "Master? No. I don't want this. You." Her lips curved in a bitter smile. "Then we both agree. I don't want you either." The two stood in silence, both trapped in a fate neither chose. Inside the house, John gave her water and a blanket, though she refused to thank him. She sat in the corner, watching him with cold eyes. Her pride was strong, even in chains. John stared at her, wondering. Who was she? Why was she here? He felt like his life had been stolen from him, turned upside down in one moment. Outside, the night was calm. But inside that house, two strangers from different worlds sat together, bound by law, bound by punishment, and bound by destiny. The air was thick with tension. Neither trusted the other. Both felt anger. But behind the anger was something else, curiosity. And as the stars moved above, the story of John and Lyra had begun. This was only the beginning. The punishment had been given. The chains had been locked. And the greatest question now hung in the air: would hate remain forever between them? Or would something far more powerful grow in its place? The morning sun rose slowly, painting the sky with orange and gold. John Miller sat at the edge of his bed, his head in his hands. He had not slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the alien girl in chains, with eyes that burned like fire. He turned to the corner of his room. She was still there, sitting on the floor, back against the wall, chains glowing faintly in the dim light. Her silver hair shimmered as the sunlight touched it. Her eyes were closed, but her body was tense, like a wild animal ready to fight. John sighed. "You're real," he whispered to himself. "Not a dream." The girl opened her eyes at once. Sharp, cold. Watching him, of course, I'm real. Human. Do not insult me. Her voice carried pride, like she was above him, even though she wore chains. John stood, unsure of what to do. "Look," he said carefully, "I don't know why. You're here. I didn't ask for this. I don't want a slave." Her lips curved into a smirk, but there was no humor in it. "Good, because I will never serve you." The collar around her neck glowed faintly, as if reacting to her words. John noticed. He walked closer, slowly, and the collar flickered with strange symbols. "What is that thing?" he asked. Her expression darkened. "It binds me. If I disobey, it burns. If I try to escape, it drags me back. This is my punishment." John frowned. A punishment for what? For a moment, silence. Then she looked away. "That is none of your concern, human." The day passed in uneasy silence. John made breakfast, simple eggs and bread. He placed a plate near her. She did not touch it. "You'll starve," he muttered. She met his eyes, defiant. "Better to starve than eat food from my captor." John felt his patience thin. He slammed the plate on the table. "I'm not your captor. I never asked for you. They forced this on me too." For the first time, her expression softened only a little. She studied him, as if weighing his words. Then she finally reached for the bread and ate slowly, never breaking eye contact with him. John shook his head. "You're impossible. And you're weak." She replied calmly. Later, John took her outside. The chains around her wrists glowed, brighter in the sunlight. She looked around at the trees, the birds, the quiet human town in the distance. For a moment, her face softened. She whispered to herself, almost too quiet for him to hear. "This world, it feels alive." John heard. Her butt said nothing. Instead, he asked, "What's your name?" She hesitated, then answered, "Lyra." "Lyra," he repeated. "I'm John, I know," she said flatly. She touched her collar, where his name was written in alien letters. "They carved it into my prison." John felt a chill. The situation was worse than he imagined. Was no gift. This was no chance meeting. This was a sentence. That night, John tried to sleep again, but the sound of chains kept him awake. He turned on the lamp and found Lyra standing at the window, staring at the stars. "What are you doing?" he asked quietly. "Looking for home," she whispered. "But it is gone to me now." Her voice carried a pain she had not shown before. For the first time, John saw her not as a strange creature, but as someone broken. Someone trapped. He stood beside her, unsure of what to say. Maybe it won't be so bad here." Her eyes flashed. "Don't pretend, human. You don't want me here. I don't want to be here. We are enemies forced into a cage." John opened his mouth to argue, but stopped. She was right. Still, he could not shake the feeling that her anger was only a shield. Hiding something deeper, as the days passed, their strange life began. They spoke little, but every word between them was sharp, like blades clashing. She refused to do what he asked. He refused to treat her like a slave. Yet, beneath the arguments, something strange began to grow: curiosity. John found himself watching her when she thought he wasn't looking, the way her eyes softened when she saw the stars, the way her voice lowered when she spoke of her world. And Lyra, though she would never admit it, began to study him too. This human who showed her food, shelter, and kindness even when he had the power to control her confused her. They were enemies, yet neither could look away from the other. But one night, everything changed. John woke to a sound outside, a low humming noise, like metal wings cutting through the sky. He rushed out the door, heart pounding. In the distance, a strange ship hovered above the trees. Lights flashed, searching. Lyra stood behind him, chains glowing bright, eyes wide with fear. She whispered in a trembling voice, "They've come." John turned to her. "Who?" "My people," she said, her voice heavy. "They've come to see if I obey." And for the first time, John realized this was not only punishment, this was a test. And both of their lives had just become far more dangerous. The strange ship disappeared by morning, leaving only silence behind. But the fear it brought remained. John did not ask Lyra any more questions that night. He only locked the doors, sat by the window with his old rifle, and stayed awake until the first rays of sun touched the land. By dawn, Lyra was still awake too. Her glowing eyes followed him quietly, as if measuring his strength. She said nothing, but John could feel something hidden in her silence, something dangerous. The next day was tense. John tried to repair his broken tractor outside, hoping to distract himself. But every time he looked up, he saw Lyra watching from the porch. Her chains glowed faintly in the daylight. She looked calm, almost bored, but her eyes were too sharp to alert. Finally, John wiped his hands and snapped, "You know, if you're going to sit there staring at me, you could at least help." Lyra tilted her head, a slow smile forming. Help a slave helping her master. Her tone was mocking, but her eyes glimmered with challenge. John shook his head. "Forget it. I'll do it myself." But before he could bend down again, something unbelievable happened. The heavy metal tool in his hand rose into the air by itself. John froze, his eyes wide. The wrench floated slowly, spinning in mid-air, glowing faint blue. Then, with a flick of Lyra's finger, it shot across the yard and landed perfectly on the tractor engine. John stumbled back. What was that?" Lyra stood, stepping closer, her chains rattling softly. "That," she said with pride, "is my gift, my power, the thing your people could never dream of." She lifted her hand again, and this time several bolts and screws floated into the air, dancing like sparks around her. With a sharp twist of her wrist, they spun themselves into place on the machine. The tractor engine gave a soft click. Fixed, John's mouth fell open. You can move things with your mind." Her smile widened, but her voice turned cold. "I can do far more than that, human. Do not mistake my chains for weakness." That night, John couldn't stop thinking about it. He sat by the fire, staring at Lyra, who sat across the room. Her glowing cuffs cast a pale light on the walls. Finally, he asked, "Why show me that? Why now?" Lyra looked at the fire, her voice low. "Because you need to understand, I am not your pet. I am not helpless, even chained. I have power." John leaned forward. "Then why didn't you escape? If you're that strong, why stay?" Here, her eyes darkened. She lifted her collar with trembling fingers. Because this binds me. Every time I push too far, it burns into my skin. You saw only a fraction today. If I unleash more, it will kill me." John felt a chill run down his spine. He studied her face. For the first time, he saw not just pride, but pain. The days passed, and John noticed more. When she thought he wasn't watching, Lyra would use her power in small, careful ways. She would float a cup of water closer instead of standing. She would make the firewood crackle higher with only a glance. But sometimes, when she lost control, strange things happened. The lights flickered, the air grew heavy. Once, a window shattered by itself when she grew angry. John learned quickly. Her emotions fueled her powers, and one night he saw the truth. A storm rolled over the town. The wind howled, lightning split the sky, and rain crashed against the roof. John stood at the door, worried his small house might not survive. Then he heard her voice behind him, soft and trembling. "They will come again. The hunters, the storm, hides them." Before he could respond, a flash of light burst outside the house. Not lightning, something else. John grabbed his rifle and rushed out. In the yard, 3 tall figures stood in black armor, their weapons glowing. Alien hunters. "Step aside, human," one of them growled. "The girl must be tested." John raised his rifle, though his hands shook. "She stays here." The hunter laughed. "You dare stand in the way of our law." Suddenly, the air shifted. Behind John, Lyra stepped into the storm. Her chains glowed hot, smoke rising from her skin. Her eyes burned brighter than the lightning. With a scream, she lifted her hands. The hunter's weapons ripped from their grip, spinning through the whip. Spinning through the air, the ground shook. Trees bent as if bowing to her rage. John staggered back, shielding his eyes. The power pouring from her was like a storm inside a storm, wild, untamed, terrifying. The hunters roared, trying to resist, but one by one they were thrown back, slammed into the mud with invisible force. And then, just as quickly, it ended. Lyra collapsed to her knees, her collar burning bright, smoke rising from it. She gasped in pain, clutching her chest. The hunters crawled away into the storm, retreating. John rushed to her side. "Lyra, stop. You'll kill yourself." She looked up at him, her face pale, sweat dripping. But her voice was steady. "Now you see, human," she whispered. "My chains may hold me, but my spirit will never obey." That night, as the storm finally faded, John sat beside her as she slept, her body weak from the battle. He realized something important. She was not only dangerous, she was not only prideful. She was suffering, and for the first time, John's fear of her changed into something else, a dangerous thought, a dangerous feeling, a seed of trust. The storm had passed, but silence stayed in the little house. John sat near the fire, his hands folded tight, while Lyra rested on the bed. Her chains still glowed faintly from the night's battle. For hours, she did not wake. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale. John checked on her again and again, wondering how a girl so strong could also look so fragile at last. Near dawn, she opened her eyes. "You should not have stayed," she whispered weakly. John frowned. "Stayed? Where else would I go?" "You nearly killed yourself." Lips curved in a faint smile, but it was full of sadness. "Humans do not understand. Power always comes with chains. The more I use it, the more it takes from me." John sat on the edge of the bed. "Then why fight those hunters? Why risk it? You could have let them take you." Her eyes burned for a moment, sharp as ever. "Because they would have killed you." The words hit John harder than he expected. He had no answer. For a long time, neither spoke. The fire crackled, and outside, birds began to sing. Then John asked quietly, "Tell me the truth, Lyra. What did you do? Why did they send you here?" Her face turned away. The chains rattled softly as she shifted. For the first time, he saw. Not pride or anger in her expression, but fear. "They told you I broke their law," she said slowly, "that I caused disorder, that I deserved punishment." "Yes," John replied. She closed her eyes. "But the truth is different. I was punished because I refused to obey." Her voice dropped lower, as if sharing a secret that still haunted her. "My people live under a council. They call themselves wise, but they are cruel. They control everything: who can speak, who can love, who can live. When they choose a child for their army, no one is allowed to say no. That child is taken away, never to return." Her hands shook. She pressed her fingers against her collar, as if it still carried the memory of that day. "There was a boy," she whispered. "My little brother, only 12 years old. They came for him. They said it was his duty, but I could not allow it. I stood in their way. I fought their guards. I broke the law to protect him." John leaned forward, his heart tight. "What happened to him?" Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. "He escaped. I made sure of that. But I was captured. They called me a traitor. They wanted to execute me, but killing me would make others question their power. So instead, they chose this punishment, to send me far away, to chain me to a human." Her voice hardened again. "Sharp like steel, they thought it would break me. That serving you would be worse than death." John sat back, stunned. The firelight flickered across his face. "You risked everything to save your brother," he said softly. Lyra met his eyes. "Yes, and I would do it again." Her words carried no doubt, no hesitation. For the first time, John saw her clearly, not as a criminal, not as a slave, but as someone who had chosen love over law and paid the price. "You're not what they say you are," John whispered. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "To them, I am a rebel. To you, I am a burden. In both worlds, I am nothing." John shook his head. "No, you're something else." The days that followed were different. John looked at Lyra with new eyes. He noticed the way her anger hid her pain, the way she held her head high even when her body shook from the collar's burns. And Lyra, though she never admitted it, began to feel something shift inside her too. This human, who should have treated her as property, instead treated her with kindness. He asked, he listened, he cared. No alien in her world had ever done that. One evening, as they sat outside watching the stars, John pointed at the sky. "Which one is your world?" Lyra followed his gaze. Slowly, she lifted her hand, pointing to a faint cluster glowing at the edge of the horizon. "Their fifth star. My home." John studied her face. Her eyes softened when she spoke of it, full of longing and loss. "Do you think you'll ever go back?" he asked. Her answer was quiet but certain. "No. My chains are forever. My home is lost to me." For a long time they sat in silence, the stars shining above them. John wanted to say something to ease the weight she carried, but the words stayed locked in his chest. That night, while John slept, Lyra stood by the window again, watching the stars. Her hands touched the glowing chains. "I saved you," she whispered to herself, thinking of her brother. "But who will save me?" Her eyes flickered toward John as he slept, his face calm, his breathing steady. A strange thought touched her mind. Dangerous thought. The days after Lyra's confession passed in uneasy quiet. John worked on his machines, fixed fences, and tried to keep life normal. But nothing was normal anymore. Every night he caught Lyra staring at the sky. Her eyes followed the stars like a hunter watching prey. She said nothing, but John knew. She was waiting. Waiting for them? One evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, John felt it again, the low hum in the air, like bees trapped inside metal. He froze. Lyra's eyes snapped toward the sky. "They're here," she whispered. John grabbed his rifle and stepped onto the porch. In the distance, lights flickered in the clouds. Then, with a roar of engines, a dark ship broke through the night sky. Its shadow swallowed the fields. The ship landed beyond the trees. The ground shook. Birds scattered into the night. John's throat went dry. "What do they want this time?" Lyra's face was pale, but her voice was steady. "To remind me that I am theirs. To remind you that you are nothing." Moments later, the hunters appeared, 3 of them again, but this time taller, stronger, their armor shining with cruel light. They marched across the yard, their boots sinking into the dirt. The leader raised a weapon. His voice was cold, mechanical. "Lyra, of the 5th star, your time of testing continues. You will obey your human master. If you do not, punishment will be doubled." John stepped forward, his rifle shaking in his hands. "Leave her alone. She's done nothing." The hunter turned his glowing mask toward him. "Silence, human. You are not part of this trial." But Lyra's voice cut through the night. "He is part of it because you chained me to him." The hunters moved closer. One lifted a strange rod, glowing with blue fire. "Show obedience, girl. Kneel before him. Call him your master." Lyra's eyes burned with rage. She refused to move. "Never?" The rod crackled, energy hissing in the air. John's heart raced. "Stop. Don't hurt her." The hunter ignored him and raised the weapon higher, and then something inside John broke. He dropped his rifle and stepped in front of Lyra, blocking her with his own body. His voice shook, but it was loud. "If you want to hurt her, you'll have to go through me." For a moment, silence. Even the hunters froze behind him. Lyra whispered, shocked. "John?" The hunter's mask tilted, studying the human who dared stand against them. Then, with a low laugh, the leader lowered the rod. "Interesting," he said. "Perhaps this trial will be more entertaining." Without warning, he raised his hand. A blast of energy shot from his palm, slamming into John's chest. John flew backward, crashing to the ground, his vision blurred. Pain burned through him. "John!" Lyra screamed. Her chains flared white-hot as she rushed to his side. For a moment, fear filled her eyes, not for herself, but for him. The hunters surrounded them. "You see, girl?" the leader said coldly. "This is what happens when you resist." But then, something changed. Lyra's hands glowed. The air around her trembled. Her chains sparked, fighting to hold her back, but her rage was too strong. The ground split beneath them. Stones rose into the air. Lightning cracked across the sky, pulled from the storm of her power. The hunters staggered, their weapons shaking. Lyra's voice thundered, louder than the storm. "You will not touch him." With one sweep of her arms, an invisible force slammed into the hunters, throwing them across the yard like leaves in the wind. Their armor sparked as they hit the ground. John struggled to breathe, his chest burning, but his eyes never left her. He had seen her power before, but now it was something else. Wild, terrifying. Beautiful Lyra stood tall, her silver hair whipping in the wind, her glowing eyes fixed on the hunters. She looked less like a prisoner and more like a queen. The hunters crawled to their knees, their armor cracked. One shouted into a device on his arm. The leader hissed, "This is not over. The council will hear of this." And with that, they vanished into a beam of light, sucked back into their ship. The yard fell silent again. Lyra dropped to her knees beside John. She pressed her glowing hands against his chest. "Stay with me, human. Do not leave." Warmth spread through him. The pain faded, his vision cleared. He blinked, staring at her face so close to his. "You healed me," he whispered. She looked away quickly, her voice sharp but shaking. "Do not misunderstand. I only did it because I need you alive. Without you, my chains have no meaning." But her hands trembled as they left his chest, betraying her words. That night, John sat by the fire again, weak but alive. Lyra sat across from him, her chains dim, her eyes on the flames. Finally, John spoke. "You saved me." She looked at him, silent. "You could have let them take me," he continued. "But you didn't." Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "You stood for me first." Their eyes met. For a moment, neither looked away. The air between them shifted, no longer just master and slave. No longer just human and alien. Something deeper had begun to grow, but far above, hidden among the stars. The hunter ship waited, watching, planning. The danger was not gone. It had only begun. The days after the attack were strangely quiet. The hunters did not return, but their shadow lingered over the little house. John's ribs still ached where the blast had struck him, though Lyra's healing touch had kept him alive. He moved slower now, careful with every step. And every time he winced, Lyra's eyes flicked toward him, quick, sharp, but not without concern. One morning, John tried to lift a heavy box from the porch. Pain shot through his side, and he dropped it with a curse. Lyra was there in an instant. Without a word, she raised her hand. The box floated into the air, guided smoothly through the doorway. John frowned. "You don't have to do that." She gave him a hard look. "And you don't have to be stubborn." For the first time, John almost laughed. He shook his head. "You're bossy for someone who calls herself a prisoner." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. "Maybe I'm simply better at giving orders than taking them." For a moment, the air between them softened. That evening, John cooked stew on the stove. The smell filled the house, warm, earthy, comforting. He handed Lyra a bowl. She sniffed it, suspicious at first, then took a slow sip. Her eyes widened. "It's good." John chuckled. "Thanks. Not bad for human food, huh?" She glanced at him, her pride fighting her words. "It is acceptable." Right. When she thought he wasn't looking, she finished every drop at night. They sat outside on the porch, watching the stars. John told her stories, simple things about Earth, about how he once built machines for the town, how he used to fish with his father, how winters here could be cruel. Lyra listened quietly, her face unreadable. Yet her questions betrayed her interest. "Why do you work with machines when you could live in the city with others?" she asked. John shrugged. "Because out here, it's quiet. Nobody bothers me, I guess. I didn't want to need anyone." Her gaze lingered on him. "And yet, you kept me alive." He shifted, caught off guard. "That's different, is it?" she asked softly. John had no answer, but the bond between them grew in small ways. When John repaired his tractor, Lyra sat nearby, using her powers to hold tools in place. When Lyra practiced controlling her energy, John stood by with water. "Ready?" When the collar burned her skin, sometimes they argued, sharp and stubborn. Sometimes they sat in silence. But slowly, without either of them saying it, the walls between them began to crack. One night, the silence broke in an unexpected way. Lyra woke from a dream with a scream. Her hands glowed, the chains burning red. The lamp shattered. The air shook. John rushed to her side, grabbing her shoulders. "Lyra, Wake up. Her eyes snapped open, wild with fear. She shoved him back with a burst of energy. The chair behind him flew across the room. Breathing hard, she stared at him, trembling. Don't touch me when I dream. John's chest pounded, but he stepped forward again slow, calm. What did you see? Her voice cracked. The council, my brother. They were dragging him away. And I couldn't stop them. She turned away, ashamed. Even in my dreams, I fail. John's voice was steady now. No, you saved him. You told me so. You gave him a chance to live. Her eyes filled with fire and pain. And what about me? What life do I have? Chained to you like an animal, hunted like prey. John met her gaze. His words came quietly but firmly. You're not an animal. Not to me. The words hung in the air. Lyra's breath caught, but she said nothing. For the first time, she didn't argue. She simply looked at him, her fierce, mask-slipping dot in that silence. Something unspoken passed between them, something fragile but real. The next day, they walked through the fields together. The sun warmed the earth, and for a while, it felt almost ordinary. Lyra touched the tall grass with her fingers. Your world is strange, she said. It is loud and quiet at the same time, but it breathes. It feels alive. John smiled. Faintly. Maybe that's why I stayed here. Out here, I can breathe too. She glanced at him, curiosity in her eyes. Perhaps we are not so different, human. That night, as they sat again beneath the stars, Lyra's voice was softer than he had ever heard. John, she said, do you ever think maybe the council sent me here for another reason, not just punishment? He turned to her. What do you mean? Her eyes glowed faintly. Maybe they feared what would happen if I found someone who saw me. Not as a weapon, not as a traitor, but simply as me. John's heart beat faster. He didn't answer, but the truth was clear in his silence. High above, hidden among the stars, the hunter's ship still watched. But inside the little house, on Earth, something more dangerous than power or chains was growing: trust, hope. The morning was quiet, almost too quiet. A heavy stillness hung over the fields, as if the world itself was holding its breath. John noticed at first the way the birds refused to sing, the way the air tasted like iron. Lyra noticed too. Stepped onto the porch, her chains glowing faintly, her silver hair catching the light of dawn. Her eyes narrowed at the horizon. They are coming, she said simply. John's stomach twisted. He had been waiting for this. Ever since the hunters last fled, he knew the council would return. And this time, they would not test. They would judge. The sky darkened. A great ship, larger than any before, broke through the clouds. Its shadow swallowed the town. People ran, screaming, as beams of light cut across the earth. The ship landed with thunder, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The council had come. A shimmering platform lowered from the ship. At its center stood 3 alien judges, their robes gleaming with silver threads, their eyes bright with power. Their voices boomed as one. Lyra of the 5th star, your punishment is complete. You were given to a human. You were to serve. Now you will be judged. Lyra lifted her chin, her chains rattling. Her voice was steady. Then judge me. But no, the Psi never obeyed. Not once. The crowd of humans who had gathered gasped. Ka stepped closer, his fists tight. She's not your slave. She's not anyone's slave. The judges turned their glowing eyes toward him. And you, human, speak truth. Did she serve? Did she kneel? Did she obey your will? John's chest tightened. He looked at Lyra proud, defiant, her eyes locked on his. For a moment, he saw every moment they had shared. Her fire, her pain, her courage, her heart. He turned back to the judges. His voice rang out clear. No, she never served me, but she saved me. She saved this world. And she is worth more than all your laws. The judges' faces darkened. One raised his hand. Then she has failed. Her chains remain. Her punishment continues until her spirit is broken. The collar around Lyra's neck flared bright, burning into her skin. She gasped, falling to her knees. The crowd cried out. John rushed forward, catching her in his arms. "Stop this," he shouted. "You'll kill her." The judges' voices thundered. This is her fate. Lyra's hands clutched John's shirt. Her eyes blazed even through the pain. "Don't let them win," she whispered, and then John did something no one expected. He stood tall, holding her close, and shouted at the sky. "If she belongs to me, then hear this high free. Her, I break your chains. She is not my slave. She is my equal. She is my wife." The words echoed across the field. The humans gasped. Even the council froze, their glowing eyes flickering. Lyra's eyes widened. John, the collar on her neck, pulsed wildly, sparks flying. It was bound by the law of ownership, Resk and John. The named master had just broken that law with his choice. The collar cracked. The chains shattered, bursting into light. Lyra fell into John's arms, free for the first time. The judges roared in fury. "You dare defy the council. You dare rewrite punishment with love." Lyra rose to her feet, no longer bound. Her power flared, brighter than ever before. The earth shook, the air crackled, the sky itself seemed to bow to her strength. She stood beside John, her voice ringing like thunder. "Yes, we dare, because love is stronger than chains. Stronger than fear. Stronger than you." The humans cheered. The judges faltered, their power shaking. They had built their law on control, but control shattered in the face of defiance and love. With a final scream of rage, the council vanished in a flash of light, their ship retreating into the clouds. Silence returned. Slowly, the people gathered around John and Lyra. For the first time, she was not a prisoner, not an outcast. She was free. John turned to her, his hand trembling as it reached for hers. "You're free now. You don't have to stay." Her eyes softened, glowing with something gentler than fire. "And leave the one who stood for me. The one who called me more than a slave? No, John, my chains are gone. But my choice is you." She took his hand. And in that moment, before the crowd and the stars above, their fate was sealed. That night, as the stars filled the sky, John and Lyra stood together on the porch of the small house. The hunters were gone. The council was defeated. The danger was not over, but the worst was behind them. Lyra leaned against him, her voice soft. "Once they gave me to you as punishment. Now I give myself to you as something else." John smiled, faintly. "As what?" Her silver eyes met his. "As your wife." The night wind carried her words, soft but unshakable. And in that moment, punishment turned into destiny, and destiny turned into love.